Call to order. Meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers,
Is your mic on?
November 20th, 2025. I will take attendance by roll call. Manager Maxwell?
Here.
White here. Manager Olson?
Here.
Manager Loftus?
Here.
Manager Sando?
Here.
Manager Miller?
Here.
Manager Hejmati?
Here.
Thank you. All of us are here. I see no public members, so next item is approval of the agenda. One change before I ask for approval, and that is to add under discussion items, the 2D model update Mr. Beck will present to us. Now, would you like to move that, Manager Miller?
Move approval.
Thank you. And second,
As
Manager
amended.
Olson? Okay, voting on approval of the agenda, Manager Hejmati?
Aye.
Manager Maxwell?
Aye.
White, aye. Manager Olson?
Aye.
Manager Loftus?
Aye.
Manager Sando?
Aye.
Manager Miller?
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam President, I didn't catch who made the second.
Manager Olson? On the consent agenda, we have approval of the November 6th board meeting minutes and approval of the check registers for the general checking register, surety checking register, and wire transfers, and two resolutions. 25067 is authorization to apply for a Bowser storage grant and MPCA planning grant. And 25068 is approving the contract for pre-demolition regulated materials survey at 6300 Painter Road. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Manager Maxwell, is there a second?
So moved.
Manager Loftus?
Second, sorry.
Seconds, okay. In favor of the approving the consent agenda, Manager Hejmati?
Aye.
Manager Maxwell?
Aye.
White, aye. Manager Olson?
Aye.
Manager Loftus?
Aye.
Manager Sando?
Aye.
Manager Miller?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Two managers, Manager Olson and I, have signed up for the annual meeting, so of course we will be the delegates, but I do need a motion to that effect.
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Maxwell seconds. Voting on the motion then to appoint delegates, Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
White, aye. Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Thank you. Manager Miller, could you give us an update, please, on the Policy and Planning Committee report, meeting?
We had a update on the on the 2027 watershed management plan, and it was just a superb presentation that we, the Board of Managers was enthusiastic about supporting, with just a few questions, and but it's really clear that they've got a good plan system in place to incorporate all of our partners' participation and input. So it's a really exciting plan. If you can get excited about a water plan, but this one you can.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Manager Sando, can you report on the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting?
Yes, Samantha, James O'Brien, and I met with the CAC on November 12th. We had a super CAC attendance, only one member was missing. We had a great discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The CAC was very engaged and had good questions and good suggestions. The MCWD staff, board, the CAC, and the voted to create a CAC task force to support the annual recruitment efforts with the goal of continuing to achieve greater diversity among the CAC memberships. We also informed the CAC of our purchase of 6300 Painter Road and our future plans for the property. One of the CAC members was familiar with the property and actually was giddy about the property and the improvements and the use that we're going to make of it. James O'Brien informed the CAC about our proposals for seeking new engineering services. And I, on behalf of the MCWD, thank the CAC for their advice and for their partnership with us over the years.
Thank you. So far, we have excited and giddy, so we're doing really well. Our upcoming committee and board meetings are noted as previously noticed. We now have a public hearing on, or public comment period rather, on the 2026 budget and levy. Mr. Wisker.
Thank you, President White. I think the packet material is fairly self-explanatory. So item 9.1 is a final public comment period on our 2026 budget and levy as part of the Truth in Taxation statute. So the very simple memo in the packet that outlines the process the board undertook this year to work through the budget preparation, the journey of which also worked through our Citizens Advisory Committee and got a lot of feedback and input there. We had a public hearing duly noticed on August 28th. We received no comments then, no comments since. So this is a final opportunity for comment on our proposed $14.5 million budget for 2026 and our $9.86 million levy. As you know, and I'll restate, this is another year of a flat levy, no levy increase, making around 6 years of flat levy, but for 1 year where we had a 2% increase over the last 6 years. So with that, we'll see if there's any members of the public that want to offer final comment on the budget, and then we will integrate those comments into the budget and levy as needed before we finalize things.
And seeing no members of the public, we can move on. Thank you very much.
I got a comment.
Yes.
I want to congratulate James for putting together this budget for last 6 years with no increase, and you see all the articles in the paper about these increases that are pretty scary. I think by and large the increases are needed, but I don't think they've gone through the discipline that James has put our budget through to make sure that we're getting we're getting the work done within reasonable tax levies, and it's easy to raise levies, but it's hard to keep levies level, and it's really we should all congratulate James for the work he's done on this.
Do you want to do
James
that
and the
one by
staff.
one?
What's that?
Do you want to do that one by one?
Congratulations, James.
Congratulations, James.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations, James.
Okay. Sort of be careful what you wish for. Well, I think the board's offered a lot of leadership over the last 6 years, and as Manager Miller mentioned, I think we understand the municipal environment and have some sympathy for the unique constraints that they're under. We're lucky in some ways that we're a special purpose unit of government, and generally a lot of our work's initiative based, so our operations end up being fairly lean, and we're picking and choosing those projects carefully. We've done a great job pulling in 6 to 10% of our budgeted expenditures each year, or on average over the last 6 or 7 years, are from grant funds and some of those member communities that are providing partner funds as well. So those are some of the reasons that we've been able to do that.
Thank you. Next is item 9.2, which is I open the public hearing for the MS4 report. Ms. Larson presenting.
Good evening, President White and Board of Managers. Tonight, we are providing the opportunity for individuals to comment on the district's Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program, or SWIP, which is a requirement of the district's MS4 permit. The district manages several stormwater conveyance systems within its boundaries under our MS4 permit. These systems are termed Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems, or MS4s for short, under the Federal Clean Water Act. This map shows the district's MS4 responsibilities, which includes 8 public ditches, shown here in purple, and 2 ponds, shown as the red dots. The goal of the MS4 permit is to reduce the volume of sediment and other pollutants from entering state waters from these stormwater systems. And a key part of this permit is the development of a Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program, or SWIP, which outlines specific strategies to accomplish this goal of pollution prevention. The SWIP is included in your board packet this evening for your reference. As a part of our SWIP, we are required to maintain records and perform activities under these 6 minimum control measures. The first control measure is education and outreach. This is led by our outreach department and includes educating the public about stormwater-related issues and illicit discharge. There's also a heavy focus on tying in strategic initiatives to ensure clean water at a regional scale, specifically with our capital projects. Public participation is the second control measure for SWIP enforcement and is led by our outreach manager and permitting program manager. Public participation is also the reason I'm speaking here today, as this annual hearing is included as a part of this measure to provide an opportunity for the public to give their input. SWIP is also freely available for the public to access, and public input is included each time we apply for a SWIP. The third control measure is illicit discharge detection and elimination, which is led by the permitting department. This item is maintained through the district's illicit discharge rule, and regulatory mechanisms are in place to ensure that illicit discharge does not occur. This item ensures inspections are carried out and procedures are in place for spills to prevent pollutants from entering MS4s. This control measure also outlines our enforcement for illicit discharge. The fourth control measure is construction stormwater runoff control, which is also led by the permitting department. This measure is maintained and reviewed through the district's erosion and sediment control and stormwater management rules, which were recently updated in the spring of 2024 to further align with MS4 requirements. The fifth control measure of the SWIP is post-construction stormwater management, again, led by the permitting department. This item puts regulatory practices in place to ensure volume and rate control are reviewed under our stormwater management rule. And then the sixth and final component of the SWIP is pollution prevention and good housekeeping, which is led by the permitting program manager. This component ensures stormwater best management practices continue to operate correctly. To give adequate notice of this public hearing, we have advertised it in the Star Tribune and posted it on our public notice page on our website. However, we have not received any public input to date. Thank you, President White and Board of Managers, for listening to this briefing on the district's stormwater pollution prevention program and MS4 permit, and for providing the opportunity for individuals to comment. At this point, I'd like to turn it back to President White for any discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Manager Olson?
A quick comment. We submit this 30-page application every year.
That is a great question.
Yeah. Is it every year? I think so,
Yes, we do.
yeah. It's submitted electronically.
Yes.
Yeah. I went through it, and it is incredibly detailed.
There's a lot in there, yeah.
So I appreciate the work you put into it, and I'm humbled by the result that we have to send in every year. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
There's nothing further. I'll close the public hearing,
Thank you.
noting that there are no members of the public here tonight. Thank you, Ms. Larson. We'll move to 11.1, Resolution 25069, Mr. Sherman presenting. We got to you quickly.
Well, good evening, President White, Board of Managers. I'm excited to be bringing you what is hopefully one of the last updates on the Gateway to the Greenway, because we are at approval of final design plans and authorization to solicit bids. So I'm going to give just a very brief refresher on what the final design looks like, since we reviewed that in some detail just this past June. Provide an updated cost estimate, and then really focus most of this evening's time on project timeline and next steps before getting to board consideration of the action. So again, as a reminder, the board had actually approved the entire final design for all of Blake Road back in May 2023. And that included the Gateway to the Greenway as part of an integrated site plan at that time. This past June, given development issues on the overall site, the board opted to separate the Gateway to the Greenway into a standalone project, which would allow at least that piece to advance while we continue to figure out what we would do on the main site plus the nature play parcel. So really the design itself has not changed at all since the board approved that in 2023. So the board's action this evening is really more focused on accepting final plans for the Gateway as a standalone project and then authorizing the solicitation of bids. So I will just go through kind of some of the major project elements here. Sort of the centerpiece is this oval with pollinator plants. Again, we've sort of talked about how the grades of this site were designed to try to get people moved towards the creek where there's a little bit less noise from the road and down more towards sort of that more natural area along the creek. And then, of course, the pergola is sort of the other visual centerpiece of the site, kind of providing some shelter for people to enjoy the creek while also sort of advertising with Minnehaha Creek and lettering atop as people drive or walk by, letting them know that there is this natural resource that they may have just been speeding by previously. On the other side of the pergola, we do have some trails that seek to get people down close to Minnehaha Creek, not into the creek itself, but some more secluded seating right down by the banks. Again, there's no regional stormwater component to this small part of the project, but we have done what we can to treat rainwater that falls on the site itself through the use of a couple of rain gardens, and again, using native pollinator species where we can in those rain gardens. And then we've integrated some of these seat walls, some more informal seating throughout the site, in addition to the more formal seating under the pergola.
The oval, is that raised like that, or is it level? Is there?
So yeah, so there's a seat wall that's probably 1.5 to 2 feet high, whatever's comfortable for seating, and then we'll have imported soils that would be suitable for growing those species. And then again, these are sort of the swing seats that are facing the creek, and then we'll also give you a view into the portion of Cottageville Park that's already been well established over the past several years. It's also, I just wanted to remind the board that this is kind of a site that's functioning in a pretty urbanized environment, and so we had spent quite a bit of time during design talking about lighting and how to create an area that feels safe, but also doesn't feel sort of like a harsh, typical sidewalk with, big typical street lighting. So I think we landed at a nice place with a lot more pedestrian scale lighting, creative use of uplighting to highlight some of the trees and rain gardens, and then also again keeping the Minnehaha Creek sign illuminated so that people passing by at any time of day would know that there is that resource available to them.
And just to comment on the project, I just got the Urban Land Institute magazine, and they cited improvements on various creeks and rivers and stuff around the country. And this design is every bit as good as anything I've seen in the National Urban Land Institute magazine, and it's something that I think we can really be proud of.
Dave, is your lighting going to be the same as the city's park requirements for time off, time on?
Yeah, that could be Manager Maxwell. Yeah, that it'll be on a timer. So right now we've set it sort of. I think we've had the city review the plans.
Okay.
They didn't have any comment on the sort of standard times that we have it set for, but that can be adjusted through a panel.
Yeah, no, I realize that. I just wondered if they wanted. I would think the city would have said we want the same hours as. Obviously,
The rest.
think about it.
Yep. Yep, for sure. We did, as part of separating out the package, have HDR and Damon Farber do a refresh on the cost estimate as well, since really the last solid cost estimate for the gateway as a standalone feature was pulled together in 2022. After that, all the costs were integrated into a single cost. So in 2022, we were carrying forward a cost more in the $700,000 range, and refreshing that in at the end of 2025. The base bid, we're coming in more at 987,000 is the estimate, with the option for a deduct alternate coming in closer to 912,000. And I think that cost estimate increase at least can be attributed to several factors that probably the board is well aware of. First of all, general inflation. It's been several years since that previous estimate was put together. And then there's also different elements of the project that have probably gone up higher than the general rate of inflation. We're using a significant amount of steel to build the pergola, labor costs, and then also, as we discussed back in June when we made the decision to pull the plans apart, we are now paying for a separate mobilization effort for just this portion of the project. Previously, if the project was bid out as one, that mobilization cost would have been spread over the entire project. So those are several factors that are probably contributing to the latest cost estimates. Speaking a little bit more about the alternates, so in addition to the illuminated pergola lettering, the decorative pavement underneath the pergola is really kind of the key and main interpretive feature of this particular site. And again, that's going to be some way of representing an outline of the watershed district itself on the pavement under the pergola. For the base bid, we have carried forward granite pavers that'd be sandblasted with that watershed design. There's been successful precedents that have turned out really nicely, including at Ridgedale Commons Park and others around the region. And that's been sort of the board's preference to carry forward. Yep. Given that that could be, a pricier element that comes in, we also wanted to at least preserve the option of a more cost-effective option if granite comes in pricier than expected. So we do have an option for more of a decorative concrete solution underneath the pergola. So we'll include both of those when we solicit bids. The base bid, again, is carrying forward the granite option. That's been sort of the board's preference and what was approved at final design. But we will at least have the option to review a decorative concrete alternative.
Question?
Yes,
Angela.
okay, before you leave that
Yes.
slide, how do those two compare with, maintenance or replacement, the two options? Is it easier because the pavers are smaller to replace them, or is it?
Manager office. Yeah, that was the maintenance of this area is something that we've kind of discussed with the city and as staff. I think given that there's going to be the swing seats in that area, I think it would have, as far as snow removal, which could be one of the more significant times of year when there's scraping on those on that paving. I think that'd have to be done by shovel. We're not going to be able to run machinery under there. So I think both options are really, have some longevity to them. I'll touch a little bit on our maintenance agreement with the city of Hopkins so we can kind of talk about who's responsible for what. But I think both options, will be suitable for long-term maintenance without significant degradation.
Okay.
So I also wanted to sort of give a project management overview, going back a little bit since some stuff has happened since we last met in June, and then also forecast what our bid schedule is going to look like. So again, going back to 2023, that was when the board had approved the full project final designs, which included the gateway to the Greenway. And at the same meeting, actually, we had also brought forward a project agreement between the Watershed District and City of Hopkins for the construction and maintenance of Cottageville Park. And that really consolidated several previous Cottageville Park agreements that had been agreed to by the parties over the years into one document that's supposed to guide maintenance and coordination for the entire site. So under that agreement, the city will accept ownership and maintenance obligations for all of the park improvements. We will maintain some responsibility for vegetation, as very similar to what we do on the other side of the creek and the rest of Cottageville Park. The two elements that the city requested that we stay responsible for replacement is related to the decorative pavement under the pergola, and then when we get to the nature play, if there's still a pedestrian bridge, that would also be the district's responsibility for replacement. So the city will be responsible for any sort of debris removal, snow removal, all of that for the entire gateway area. If there is any chipping of granite, those sorts of things, we would be responsible for replacing those specific elements. Oops. Again, moving on to June of this year, the board authorized to amend the design contract to separate out the gateway as a standalone construction item. At that time, we also amended the contract to include bid support and construction oversight. So in some recent presentations and action items where we've gone out to bid, the board probably will recall having also approved some of those oversight tasks. We've already taken care of that through that previous project amendment. So over this past summer and into the fall, we've taken our time to really separate out those all the elements of the gateway into its own bid package. That's what we're approving this evening. We also took some time to make sure that we have all of our permits either in place or ready to be secured at the time that we go out for bid and award a contract. Again, we don't really have a regional stormwater component to this part of the project, or we're not really touching any significant water resources. So the two permitting agencies is the district itself plus City of Hopkins. When we had approved the project back in 2023, we had actually also secured our watershed district permit. That had since expired, so we've worked with district permitting to renew that permit. So we're all set from a watershed district permitting standpoint. The remaining permits are through the City of Hopkins and will be contractor responsibility to actually pull the permits. We wanted to make sure that there's no speed bumps when we get to that process. So we, back in July, met with Hopkins engineering and planning staff to go over these plans and explain the intent, explain how we were separating this out into the separate project, and City was supportive of that approach and had noted that they didn't see any problems with issuing any of those permits, that the contractor would apply and they would sort of point them to the necessary permits. We would think it would be right-of-way, a building permit for the pergola, and potentially electrical if that's a separate permit from the building permit. We did submit our final plans in early October and did not receive any comment on those. At this point, we're assuming that everything is permittable based on our conversations in July. We're set to go out for bid sometime this winter. We're looking at likely January. And that would give us most of 2026 to actually construct the project. The actual construction duration is most likely a couple of months. But going out early in the new year will give us and a contractor some flexibility about when to actually start that construction. And that can hopefully help get some favorable bids when we give an entire year's window really for that construction. We'll have some guardrails to make sure that the construction doesn't last the entire year, but we'll have some flexibility on that start date. So with that, that's really kind of the update that I wanted to provide. And before you this evening is Resolution 25-069, which would approve the final design of the Gateway to the Greenway and authorize the solicitation of bids for construction. And I can certainly answer any questions that the board has at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move approval.
Manager Miller moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Sando seconds. Any questions or discussion? Manager Olson?
Is there, I see in your photograph here, the 2 swings and then a gentleman in a wheelchair. Is there any ADA issue with swings?
That is a good question. We, I believe, have left space for wheelchairs to pull up and enjoy the view without being impeded by the swings. I'd have to double check if any of the swings themselves are considered, adaptive, and I assume that would be sort of specific to the user of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything, Manager Maxwell?
The city did not want you to go back through planning and zoning or bring presentation to the city council at all?
Manager Maxwell, no, I think largely because the design itself is exactly the same that was approved in 2023. At that time, we had been through Parks, the Parks Board process, and then also to council, and they had all approved it at that time. So really, it was just a delay in construction without any, I would say substantive, but without any change actually to the design at all.
What's our thoughts about going back and asking to make a presentation again to this council? Get people more excited about it once they see the pictures they're going to. Otherwise, I'd rather stay ahead of the game than behind them. Or if you think that's not a very good idea.
Well, Manager Maxwell, President White, we have discussed, how to get this project kind of back into the public conversation. I think the city, also views it like we do as just being sort of a positive. We're finally, there is the nature play parcel, but as far as what people think of as being Cottageville Park, this will be sort of the last little bit of it. And so I think there's some excitement on everyone's part to get it completed. So I don't think the city saw any need for it to go back in front of it. So I think it would really be, it'd be a board decision whether or not there's value.
Mr. Whisker?
President White, Manager Maxwell, managers, as Gabe mentioned, we discussed that just this week. And I'd asked Gabe the same question in terms of where are we at with our engagement with the city on this, and then how we've got the other Greenway Trail connection that's on some sort of similar timeline that we're actively negotiating agreements on with St. Louis Park. So we've discussed a co-media strategy for this renewed investment in the Greenway, as Gabe mentioned, to get this back into the public sphere and making sure that the city's as excited about this project as we are. And in the conversation I had with Gabe, I think he mentioned as well today to the board the lead time that we have on construction and getting this out for early bid. That as the board authorizes this out for early bid, we're going to be working with Samantha and the team to figure out exactly what are the specific steps that we're taking to generate some positive media, link back up with the city, secure the final permit. So that's something that we could certainly report back on. Of course, if the board's got any particular ideas about not just engaging the city, but engaging others, the community, the media, we take those ideas and we can mirror those back when we are next in front of you.
And I agree with that, but I think, if you look at with the plans, everything else, it's black and white. I'd rather see, if we're going to do any kind of presentation out to the public, throw as many pictures as we can out. Colored pictures to get people wow, instead of just looking at graphic designs and, drawings. I want pictures so they realize what we're doing and then why we're doing it, because it's a continuation of the other part.
And Manager Maxwell, we've also sort of talked about probably, again, a little bit closer to construction when I think there's some, it seems a little bit more tangible to people is probably when we would start some of those efforts, rather than, I think even though we're excited to get to the release of bids and all of that, I think for the public, when we're a little bit closer to shovels in the ground is when it seems kind of tangible to people.
Oh,
So-
yeah, right now, I realize that we're just early process now, but the quicker we can get some stuff out after we go through the bidding process, everything else, then start throwing stuff out, not just drawings. I want, wow, that's a nice picture.
It'd be nice to have this picture on the construction fence.
Yeah.
Is there anything else before we vote? All right, then voting to approve the resolution, adopt Manager Hidamati,
Aye.
Manager Miller, Max Miller, Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Loftus,
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
White says aye, Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Going now to item 11.2, Ms. Moran presenting Resolution 25070.
In your neck of the woods.
Evening, President White, Board of Managers. Just give me one moment to presentation up. All right, well, I'm very pleased to be here this evening to bring forward ordering of the Montgomery Avenue Stormwater Management Project and authorizing the district administrator to enter into the Land and Water Partnership Funding Agreement, as well as the watershed-based implementation funding grant administration agreement between the City of Deep Haven and the district. And this project has come through the board throughout 2024, and that's through our LWP evaluation discussions, approval for a minor plan amendment, as well as our public hearing. And so this evening really is just that last step to order the project and move forward with funding agreements now that the City of Deep Haven has secured additional grant funding sources for this project.
Has the blizzard come through since you look like you're dressed for bad weather?
It's cold in here.
I was
She knows
cold.
what this room's like.
Yes. I was not going to wear the scarf, but then I was too cold, so the scarf stayed on, so sorry. So in terms of a flow this evening, I'll just do a pretty quick background on this project. I'll speak to the LWP request, the evaluation process, as well as just kind of key milestones for this project, and then wrap up with action. And so through the LWP program, a partnership opportunity was identified through early coordination with the City of Deep Haven. And so that included providing technical support at a concept level. So we did a citywide scan of potential opportunities throughout the entire city. So we looked at city studies that they provided us. We looked at their CIP. We looked at regional opportunities for stormwater. We also looked at their road CIP to see if we could figure out where we could add curb and gutter to route additional stormwater. And then we also looked at areas that the city flagged as opportunities or issues that they saw. And so then, based off of the citywide screening, the Montgomery Avenue project was identified as the most cost-effective opportunity and was prioritized by the city to improve water quality and then also address localized flooding concerns in the area. And so the project area here is circled in blue on that lower part of the screen. And again, right, it's designated for that alleviating flooding and then improve downstream water quality by reducing total phosphorus loading by an estimated 5.7 pounds to Lake Louise, which is circled in red here on the screen. And then ultimately this drains to Robinson's Bay within Lake Minnetonka and the subwatershed shown here on the screen. And so then zooming into the project area a little bit further, the proposed infiltration basin is designed on the project site. And here that is circled in blue. It's really to take advantage of the site's natural topography and the existing surface drainage for this 5-acre area drainage. And so it's capturing runoff from the Calvary Church property, as well as Montgomery Avenue, which is running north-south on that western edge of the project, as well as along some residential areas to the west and south. And I do think it's important to note that, during early submittals from the city, they envisioned a below-ground basin for this project. However, through continued coordination with the city, the design was refined to this above-ground infiltration basin It's both most cost-effective, but also more realistic from an operations and maintenance standpoint for the city. And the project before you this evening reflects that update in terms of approach. But since this was last in front of the board, the water quality improvements still have remained consistent throughout. And then because the above-ground basin, as you can see in that blue circle, also occupies a portion of the church's existing parking lot, the design also includes a reconstruction of a smaller parking lot area here to the southeast in yellow there, if you can see that on the screen. And that's just to help offset some of the lost parking spaces for the church property. And for just kind of key milestones for this project, so starting in February 2024, the city submitted its initial notice of interest for the LWP funding. And under this program, the district engineer reviews each NOI for feasibility, cost estimates, as well as water quality calculations. And then the staff evaluates the proposal using the LWP program criteria. So that's our resource need, our project benefit, cost effectiveness, and then of course, partner coordination. And the city's initial request was for 75% of the water resource costs for their project. But given the modest water quality benefit and the fact that the receiving bay is not impaired for nutrients, staff recommended a contribution around 20%. So in March of 2024, the city also learned that they had been awarded roughly a little over $4,500 through Hennepin County's Opportunity Grant Program. And so this was kind of the first step of them starting to chip away at that cost gap for the project. Then in April of 2024, staff brought this project to OPC to review the staff recommendation of funding for $125,000 in LWP funding. And the committee supported the staff's approach and recommendation to move forward with this project. So then in June of 2024, the board formally expressed its intent to provide $125K in LWP funding and then authorized staff to proceed with a minor plan amendment as well as notice a public hearing for the project as well. And then with the public hearing that was held on July 25th of 2024 in accordance with the Minnesota statute 103B.251, we did have 2 residents attend and they both expressed support for this project as local residents. And in August of 2024, the board approved the minor plan amendment. So that's authorizing the opportunity-based stormwater projects that reduce runoff and pollutant loads to both impaired and as well as non-impaired bays to Lake Minnetonka to our watershed management plan. So from there, the district and the city, we continued coordinating over the next year as the city refined the design, improved cost efficiency, and then also sought additional grant sources to close that remaining funding gap. And through the Bowser watershed-based implementation funding process, the project was awarded $200,000. So that kind of it was that final step to close that funding gap. And bringing us to the fall here of October 2025, the city submitted their updated NOI to the district. You can find the NOI and also the district engineer review memo in your board packet. And then since then, the city and the district, we've been finalizing the LWP funding agreement as well as the WBAF grant administration agreement between us and the city. So to summarize, the revised project cost is just under $544,000. That includes $525,000 in water-related element costs. And the city's worked with the district to secure the additional funding sources. So early on, they received that Hennepin County grant, as I mentioned. They were able to close the gap with that Bowser WBIF grant. We have our $125 for the LWP, and then the city's covering the remaining costs, which is just under $174,000. So looking ahead, the city's next steps are fairly straightforward. Over the winter, they'll be completing final design, working with the district's permitting team. So Veronica and her team, they've been tracking this LWP project. They'll be setting up a pre-application meeting scheduled for this year. The city's also continued to work closely with Calvary Church. The church has been supportive of the project throughout its development, and the city's in the process of finalizing an easement agreement. And so the city shared that with us as well, because this is how the city will, allow construction and long-term maintenance between the city and the church. So the district's legal counsel did review that agreement, provided comments. The city's incorporating that into their agreement between the city and the church. And so with all these pieces in place, the city is planning to move forward They'll be going out to bid later this winter with anticipated construction this spring of 2026. So going to staff recommendations. So we recommend, ordering the Montgomery Avenue Stormwater Management Project, which allows the project to be placed in our CIP and receive LWP funding. In addition, authorize the execution of the LWP funding agreement between the district and the city of Deep Haven. So that's attachment 4 in your packet. And that really outlines the requirements for design, construction, access to right maintenance, cost responsibility, and other terms and general requirements for the LWP program. And then lastly, authorize the execution of the WBAF grant administration agreement between the district and the city. And so that's attachment 5 in your packet. And this is where the district agrees to serve as the grantee. So we're facilitating the city's access to the grant funds on the condition that the city will be responsible for all the grant requirements other than basic kind of admin reporting obligations that we'll handle. So all 3 of these actions are outlined in Resolution 25-070 for the board consideration this evening. So with that, any questions?
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Manager Olson, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Loftus, questions or discussion? Seeing none, I will call a roll for the vote. Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Loftus,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
White, aye, Maxwell.
Aye.
That is adopted. Thank you very much, Ms. Moran.
Thank you.
Our next item, 12.1, is a 2D model update. Mr. Beck presenting.
President White, Board of Managers. I have a continuation of our committee meeting from committee, giving an update on the 2D model as it relates to the 2027 watershed management plan. So just to start out, as a reminder, 2D model really is part of a larger project, which is the Climate Action Framework, and its service to vulnerability and scenario planning to understand how water is moving through our system and how to adapt to climate change. And I think kind of as you step back and as we started to think about the model, I just plucked out some language from the model, from the Climate Action Framework, which was initially we really were trying to figure out how to meet the needs of our future, but understand how water moves through our system into high resolution, just because understanding how to adapt means you have to understand what the watershed currently is. And so as we were doing that, I think it made me think of our integrated planning framework, which is what Becky and talked a lot about earlier in committee. And specifically related is the focus of the 2D model is the first part of our integrating planning method, which is understanding resource needs. And that also looks very similar to the figure that we've shown many times of the 2D model, which is trying to understand how water moves through our system from beginning of precipitation, but falls on our landscape, goes through storm sewers into our lake streams, but also infiltrates into groundwater. And I think the important part from that is there was a few things that were missing from our tools in 2003 when we built the XP Swim model, including detailed storm sewer networks and groundwater, which made it hard to understand not only from a city perspective, but also how water moves through our system in a longer term. And so in that 2003 model, which was used heavily in the 2007 planning process, I think it did a really great job of taking MCWD questions, so looking at loading to water bodies like Minnehaha Creek or different lakes, impaired lakes, and trying to answer questions quantitatively using that model and providing quantitative answers, which was really valuable for the district. But at the same time, it was a math-based approach, which was really focused on receiving water bodies, including Minnehaha Creek and other impaired water bodies. And so it really didn't follow what we tried to do now, which is our integrated planning and trying to support partners' needs and our needs. And so the only kind of slight difference between what that was and what we're trying to do now is instead of only answering MCWD questions, we also want to answer partner questions, which are how to support their goals and their needs in providing quantitative answers for those things as well. And so as we think about how we do that, the two things that we were missing, as a reminder, was more detailed storm sewer networks, because our previous model, or current model, was really focused on the water bodies that drain our landscape, and it really didn't have information from cities in addition to groundwater. So as we've been putting the model together, I just wanted to provide some information on what's gone into the model and how that's going to support some of the planning process. So this is, as many of you know, the Watershed District. And so we've put in 95 miles of streams.
That's in there, right?
The Watershed District, yes. We focused on that area specifically in the state. But in addition, we've delineated approximately 31,000 acres of wetlands, ponds, and lakes. So there's a lot of water bodies that we want to ensure that we understand how much storage we have in different areas and how much storage we're lacking in different areas as well. And the idea behind that is one of the things that was missing in the model in 2003 is that many of them kind of moderate or smaller wetlands or ponds weren't included, so you couldn't figure out where additional storage was needed. In addition, I think we know that the lower watershed, as kind of the Minneapolis and different Edina projects come forward, is that there's a lot of storm pipes in the lower watershed. And so what we did was took all the cities' data and build a data pipeline to take 29 cities, 2 counties, state agencies' data, and put it into one single format, which has resulted in 40,000 inlets, 52,000 pipes, 19,000 manholes, which service nodes, and we've surveyed 2,000 culvert inlets and outlets. And so one of the most important parts of the planning tool that we're trying to build for the watershed is not something that just helps us plan for our water resources, but helps cities plan for the thing that they care a lot about, which is their stormwater infrastructure. In addition, many of the wetlands in the upper watershed that have been ditched also have culverts at their outlets, which are really one of the things that are keeping those wetlands from storing as much water as we want. And so knowing what those culvert elevations are is really critical to understand which ones we need to restore. In addition, one of the last pieces is we've incorporated from the Hennepin County and Carver County geologic atlases the groundwater material, so we can understand once water infiltrates into the ground, where does it go, and how can we find areas for increased infiltration. And so, sometimes it's easy to look and say, yeah, that's just a landscape, and that's how we understand the world. But we've taken a lot of time to pull that apart, take each data set, find how to either characterize that data set, find some other agency that's already done a great job creating a data set or collecting it ourselves to ensure that the data sets that we need to build that digital representation of our physical world and put that into a planning tool so we can plan with our cities. And the key is we have storm sewers now in kind of in gruesome detail in the model, so we can really understand if a city wants to upsize a pipe, is there an option to infiltrate over here? Where does water go once it infiltrates, and where do we need more wetlands or to restore a wetland that has has been ditched or the outlet's been lowered? And so that's just taking all those layers and putting them together, but that isn't going to happen in a vacuum. The purpose of that is really to ensure that we can take the integrated planning process take the layers that the cities really care about and other agencies really care about and overlap that with what's going on. And so we're getting very close, which is exciting. So with all that being said, I know a status update is also valuable in that we just submitted our first, the preliminary lower watershed model to reviewers to review just the build and provide comments to ensure that we're building it best industry standard practices and they can make any recommendations on.
Who are the reviewers?
So we have an academic reviewer from Virginia Tech who specializes in climate change analysis using the Stormwise model. And then we're having the Streamline company, which builds the Stormwise model, also review it just to ensure that we're building it. And so they're providing that review, and that should take a few weeks. And after they provide those comments back, we're going to submit the upper preliminary watershed model, and then ultimately take all that information, review it internally with HDR, and then have an internal discussion of how to refine the model to ensure it supports the 2027 watershed management plan and the climate action framework. And then early next year, ideally, have the model finalized with those model improvements implemented, calibrate, and finalize in a final report that we can hand over to Becky to really quickly run through a 2027 watershed management plan.
Did that read Jan 26?
Yes, Jan 26.
He's
Thanks.
already said he doesn't have a time.
Yeah. I didn't want to use it
Okay.
in committee. Thank you. For budget, we've spent $623,000 of the HDR, or I guess of the overall LCCMR budget, with a remaining based on the last approved invoice of $67,000 in the HDR budget. One thing to note is we have $46,000 of unallocated LCCMR funds because the engineering estimate or the RFPs came in lower than the total amount of the overall grant. So we will have an additional amount, and we've been saving that based on some of to ensure that we can get comments back from the reviewers and identify if maybe there is a few additional data collection pieces or if there's something else in addition to the model that we've built so far. So with that, sure that I provide time for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Question?
Is there any other district in this area that has such a model?
Not that I know of.
How about nationwide? Is it all accepted?
I guess I could ask Andrew if he's familiar with a model similar.
Well, I think down in Florida with it. Still wasn't. Even if you talk.
Thank you.
I got the two agencies that you mentioned you give it to. How about the Met Council? Do we give that to the Met Council at all to have them review it to get them excited? Maybe they could pass it on to other agencies.
Manager Maxwell, we haven't used the Met Council for review of our model. We did have them provide input during the pilot model effort, just so they understood what we were doing. But I think, the Met Council is an agency that's interested in seeing how we have approached this because they're looking at doing some regional modeling too for
So I think
stormwater.
we should keep them well informed of the great progress that you're making, because maybe they'll feed a little bit more off it or something like that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else? Well, thanks so much for the update. It's a good
exciting.
place to be.
Tremendous. Got a question for,
I would like
Oh, okay.
copies of those summaries of the miles of sewers and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty interesting
Yeah.
stuff, and I've never seen it before. It'd be great, thanks.
Your question, Ms. Rolfo?
Question on the Fort Lauderdale, does that have it, is pumping part of the solution as to why they have the modeling, pumping schedules?
Down there. I didn't work on that or.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I just want to say something really special.
Thank
Who
you.
did we get the groundwater mapping from?
I think it's a geologic.
Okay,
It's a cross-section.
okay. And that existed before?
Incredible.
All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Are there any board inquiries, issues, or ideas to be brought forward this evening? Seeing no hands, Mr. Whisker will take your report.
Yeah, thank you, President White. I'm kind of in a daze from that presentation because it's just so impressive. And I think, as usual, very understated by Brian. I mean, you think you can just glean from the surface the level of passion and intensity he's put into that thing. And if you're reading between the lines in Andrew Judd's coded language of being pushed gently by Brian to the limits of what the model is capable of, I mean, it's just a ridiculous amount of information that's integrated into there. And it'll be exciting once it gets turned on and we start producing visual results. But having all of that basin storage, all of those miles of stream. I know Brian and his team have been out. I think he said, it's been a long 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to sleeping this weekend because he's literally been out in the field canoeing around 6 Mile, taking bathymetry surveys of the channel. And typical Brian fashion along the way, it's like, oh, the channel's just fascinating. It's got this undulating bottom. It's not flat. This is going to really inform anything that we do with the potential alum dosing facility. But he's had a team of seasonals out there renting survey equipment, roaming around the watershed in competition style, surveying all those culverts, keeping him motivated with shout outs at all hands meetings and awards that he's 3D printed. We did a staff Halloween gathering, and they all dressed up in Culver's uniforms, but they were culverts. It's a small So he's gamified the whole thing, but the amount of information that he's been able to pull out of the field and put into digital form for this model I don't think you can overstate it as compared to where we were with XB Swim. And the emphasis on making sure it doesn't just answer water resource questions, but it's going to serve our partners. I think that's really guided this effort that's been pioneering to integrate 29 cities worth of stormwater data into one data stack, all normalized. Nobody has done that in the region. And I had the pleasure of presenting back-to-back sessions with Brian at the Minnesota Association of Floodplain Managers in a presentation titled From Forecast to Action, where we walk through a strategic vantage point on our climate action framework and the direction that we've set as an organization, which really focuses on short-term adaptations, our flood response plan, how we can use our remote sensor network to provide and broker information to emergency managers, and this, our long-term adaptation strategy. And we've presented that at Water Resources, we presented at the Minnesota Association of Floodplains, and I keep encouraging Brian, I think the way that Manager Maxwell did, like, you gotta get out and shout about this from the rooftops, which I'm trying to push him and help him do, because I think he's so understated on it. Every time we get out, afterwards, there's a line of people asking, how did you do this? And how can we do it? At the Water Resources Conference, we were approached by MnDOT, who's been traveling down to Iowa looking at the Iowa Flood Center. And they said, we're going to be making a pitch for the Minnesota Flood Center, and we're trying to scale exactly what you've done with ResNet. And the same thing with the 2D model. Manager Maxwell mentioned Met Council very early on. They were guiding and participating in platform selection and understanding what we're doing, because they said, man, it would be great to have this as a regional tool, to have all the city's storm sewer in one data stack. How do you do that? And I think it's pure effort is the answer. Brian's really good at that. I had a first note on my admin report about, we went to the Floodplain Managers Conference, and then I got distracted with his presentation.
I want to interject in your report that Manager Olson and I attended the presentation that Mr. Becker and Mr. Wisker did at the annual meeting last year, and the crowd spilled out in the hall. The room was overfilled, and people were very interested. And I think they hung around and asked questions then, too.
Yeah, it's been great for me presenting Brian's work. I keep getting out there, and here's what Brian's doing, and then I get all the credit. So it's, yeah, a big shout out to Brian, I guess, for his leadership, for making sure we honor that sound science and do it in a way that's delivering value to partners.
One of the things about being the father of a new idea and creating it is the invitation to be an adjunct professor at the University of Minnesota for that area. So I've had many professors in my background who develop strain gauges in Wankel engines and all kinds of things. So being the originator is usually the precursor to some pretty fun stuff and helping other people learn. So
I think Brian's unique challenge, not to keep putting you on the spot, is once he's solved a really insurmountable problem, he just wants another one. He doesn't want to talk about the one we just solved. So we need to find him another big problem. Moving on, we recently issued our request for proposals for a new district engineer, and just this week conducted an informational interview hosted in this room. We had 7 participants. Andrew Judd was here from HDR, Todd Shoemaker, who's in the audience, from AE2S, Geosyntec, Young Environmental Consulting, Resilience Resources, Midwest Geological, and More Engineering. So a pretty good turnout. Proposals are going to be due December 19th, and then our selection panel will screen those proposals, and then we'll set up interviews, which President White's going to be participating in. She'll also have a hand in reviewing the proposals. Those are scheduled closer towards the end of January. I want to keep you posted on how the process is moving. I think at the last last board meeting, I had mentioned just permits of note that are out there, and that we were currently working with the county on reviewing the North Arm boat launch. And I had flagged that was heading to Planning Commission. There's some controversy amongst the community around a proposed commercial loading area in the launch that the county owns and operates. That's been pulled out of the plans, but it was still a lively discussion at the Planning Commission, a couple of hours discussion, and ultimately the Planning Commission denied the application, and so it's not advancing to council. We're planning on regrouping with Hennepin County in the next week or so to focus on our elements, which really are related to wetlands on site, which may be incidental because there's a lot of fill that happened a long time ago that resulted in this being a launch, as well as shoreline edge treatments with steps and fishing piers and things that they're proposing to improve recreational access at this location, so that we can make sure their design aligns with our rules, but also meets their goals for expanding recreational access. That's what's happening on that permit front. And then finally, just to wrap up, this last week, we celebrated a really big organizational milestone. Becky Christopher completed her 17th year at the district, which is a big one.
You started in junior high?
I don't know how it works, because 17 years and 20, and when I turned my 20th year, Dick's like, yeah, it's really showing. I think, as everybody knows, across those 17 years, Becky's effortlessly led the organization in a whole variety of roles. She was riding up front with me and Lewis as a permitting expert when we revised our rules back in the day. She's been one of our key policy architects, planning strategist, and a culture builder. And I think what stands out isn't just the list of accomplishments for Becky. It's like all of her team. It's the approach and character and joy that she brings to the organization, but there is a pretty good list of accomplishments. She helped us initiate Arden Park. We were talking about that in committee. That was a project that actually Becky kickstarted and ultimately got finished because the project took a couple of detours and she had moved departments by a different team, but kudos to her for getting that off the ground. Our Long Lake wetland restoration, just south of Long Lake, where she pulled in about $250,000 from Met Council to reconfigure, restore, remediate former tertiary wastewater lagoon that we affectionately refer to as the Hodak Memorial Sewage Lagoon in honor of her maiden name. And then she delivered our realigned vision in the 2017 watershed plan, which introduced balanced urban ecology to all of our communities. It launched focal geographies before focal geographies were a thing. It introduced the responsive model, which we're just approving funding for this evening under the Land and Water Partnership banner. And then you've heard this evening from Brian and her and Sam about where we're going with the finished climate action framework. And I think beyond that, she's been a huge champion in our new organizational culture and really worked hard alongside me and Mike and others to bring in new staff talent and keep the vibes strong so that we keep delivering next level results. A couple of other things, you got to go on a bit because it's 17 years. I think with these long range plans, that's sort of Becky's superpower. This uncanny ability to take very large, complex, ambiguous challenges and just sit there calmly, typing away at her desk, turning it into a really neat structure that everybody else looks at and says, makes a ton of sense. So clear, like Dick said earlier, this plan is exceptionally clear. It's going to write itself. It's not. Becky's going to write it.
Was that an insult?
No.
I think it's a testament to her ability because we can take it for granted that the communities are going to receive it well, they're going to understand it, and it is going to come together quite easily. I don't think she feels like that every day of the week, but I've got a ton of trust, and I think the board does too. I think beyond that's just her leadership style. She's got this subtle chuckle, dry humor, quiet wisdom. She's very calm in my storm because I'm a pretty intense person, and any kind of organizational pressure that we're under, she's just a reliable force. And as staff knows, I think you've got this deep, weird, undying love of bread and cheese. I'm not sure how that fits into your leadership style, but I needed to plug it. So she shaped all of our work, I think, the way that we do it. She's ensured outwardly our organization's known for deep strategic thinking, long-range thinking, that we're a collaboration, that we have unbridled potential, and that we're inviting our communities into that exciting sphere, like Dick mentioned in committee. And that influence woven into all of our partnerships, our plans, our culture, and our partners are picking up what she's laying down. So it's been just a ton of fun and a great honor to spend 17 of my 20 years learning from Becky and questing together for next level impact. So I wanted to take a little minute and make special mention of it.
So we could actually.
Yeah.
17 more years.
Yes.
And like I think we said earlier, we're not a name, we're a story.
Yes.
All stuff.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of stories there that made through this whole process. We're just not, MCWB. We got something to back us up for it.
Are you retiring? Sounds like retirement.
That's the first time I've heard that kind of a review and we get to keep her.
Yeah. Please come back tomorrow. Thank you, Becky. Yeah, you're welcome. That's what I have for the administrator's report, unless folks want to pour more love on Becky.
Thank you very much.
My only comment would be this organization would not be the same without you. So we really do need 17 more years. So thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.